Well, one of the things I learned when I was studying ancient Egyptian mythology was that the Egyptians worshipped Horus, that's the eye.
Yeah.
And we may have talked about this before, but they weren't worshiping rationality. They weren't worshiping that monkey mind. They were worshiping attention itself. Mm-hmm. And they regarded attention as the process that revitalized dead totalitarianism, because they had a god for that. That was Osiris. And so there's something, and when the Egyptians were contemplating what constituted proper political sovereignty, they regarded the union of Osiris and Horus as the emblem of proper sovereignty. And that was the Osiris that was rescued from his totalitarian state by his union with Horus. So it's like the conceptual world, which tends to ossify, like Egypt in the Exodus book, and the attention process, which focuses perhaps on what's outside of totalitarian certainty, and therefore continues to update it. And that's not rationality. And I think it's pointing to something that's similar to what you're fascinated by with your concentration on it. I think it's on attention per se. It's not rationality. It's certainly not,
right.
It's not the contents of thought. It's something more like direct apprehension. And in clinical practice, Carl Rogers particularly, taking a bit of a leaf from Freud, but he said that if you attend to your clients, which meant listen to them, but it meant attend. It didn't mean engage them in rational dialogue. It meant more like listen. They will transform psychologically as a matter of course.
Right. Yeah, so I use attention in a slightly different way, or a more specific way, and differentiate it from something like consciousness or awareness itself. So that, and this is, I think this is, I mean, I'm sure there are different ways of using it, but one tends to meet this definition now in cognitive science and neuroscience, where it's a narrowing of the field of awareness, but there's still a field, or it's like a spotlight within a larger field. So, for instance, I'm looking at you on Zoom now, and I can look at one of your eyes, right? I can specifically look at that eye, and I can focus on that. But there are many other things within my visual field that I am not focusing on, but which are nevertheless there, and one of them could suddenly capture my, quote, attention. Right, so I'm looking at your eye. I'm doing my best to look at your eye to the exclusion of everything else. But if a mouse ran across my desk, all of a sudden, that would have 100% of my attention. And so it's that shift. It's the shift of the spotlight. That's the attentional mechanism that is happening within this larger context of what I would call consciousness or awareness, because it's
So you're using attention as
the spotlight,
like the fovea.
Right, exactly. So it's the kind of the cognitive fovea where...
So that's where consciousness is most intense, right? Because those neurons each neuron in the fovea is connected to 10,000 neurons in the primary visual cortex. So it's tremendously dense cortically. And then, so you could think of, maybe we could distinguish these two concepts this way. So in the center of your vision at the fovea, it's extraordinarily high resolution consciousness, which we call attention. And then as you move out from the fovea to the periphery, your consciousness becomes lower and lower resolution until out here, if you're speaking visually, you can't even really count the number of fingers that you see. You can see the hands only if they move. And out here, it's black and white. And out here, it's gone.
Yeah.
High resolution, foveal focus. And you can move your eyes to put that high resolution, high neurological vision to work.
Yeah, I would use the terminology a little differently here, though, because I wouldn't say that consciousness is diminishing at the edges. I would say that visual perception is. So consciousness is just the fact that anything is being known, right? So you can be conscious, for instance, of very blurry vision, right? Or you can be conscious that you're blind, that you can't see anything, right? But like if you just close your eyes now, even your visual consciousness is just as present It's just you're
Right,
just aware of
okay,
this
okay.
the darkness behind your eyelids, right? And it's not
Okay,
even
so
all
then-
that dark. It's scintillating
Right.
with various colors, and right. So
Okay, so we could say that you've got that high resolution attention in the middle, then it gets lower resolution out to here where you can't see, and then that's all contained within a broader attentional field.
right, yes, and I would call that the broadest possible field, just consciousness,
Okay,
or awareness.
Fine. So so now we know exactly what we mean by our terms.
And so what I would say is to your question, which I think is a very important question. What's the point of examining the self? Much less transcending it. There's several points. I mean, the main one is that it is the string upon which all of our suffering is strung. I mean, it is when you feel as miserable as you can feel, that sense of being at the center of this torment, and you're like, what direction will you find relief? Right? I mean, this is you've got the cacophony of unpleasant experience, and then you've got this place in the middle of it, or apparent place in the middle of it, from which you're trying to resist this experience, right? Or trying to figure out how to change it, right? So let's say you have a terrible pain, somewhere in your body. There's the pain, there's the strong stimulus of unpleasant sensation, the burning and stabbing and twisting feeling. And then there's this reaction to it from apparently some point outside the pain, very likely, for most people up in the head. I mean, most people feel like they're a subject in their heads that is not truly coincident with the rest of their body. They don't feel, most people for the most part don't feel identical to their bodies. They feel like they have bodies, and these bodies can misbehave in various ways. And again, so you have a terrible pain. The pain's down there. Let's say it's in your knee. You're up here now a hostage being tortured by the misbehavior of the rest of your body, right? And you're resisting, you're trying to find some way of resisting these sensations. And so it is with emotional distress or unpleasant thoughts, right? You can have thoughts that terrorize you. And all of it seems to suggest, I mean, this is the extreme case of stark unhappiness, but even in the best of times, right? Even when things are going really well and everything experience is very smooth and we're getting what we want, and we our favorite treats are just an arm's length away, and we're filling our mouths with gumdrops or whatever it is. We're gratifying this thing at the center of our experience, and it can never be finally gratified because experience itself is impermanent. It's just you get to the thing you want, and you gorge yourself on it, and then you
want a new thing.
You want a new thing. Then you need a drink of water because this lingering taste in your mouth of chocolate mousse or whatever it is too cloying and too much, and you got to wash that out so that you wouldn't want to stay in that state even if you could. And there's kind of this rolling dissatisfaction, even insatisfaction, that we all encounter, even in the best of times, right? Even when you literally can get anything, more or less anything you want. And yet we know at any moment it can be subverted by something terrible happening. At any moment you can suddenly feel like you might be having a heart attack, right? And then that becomes the thing that this sense of me in the middle of everything collapses upon, and it makes life. I mean, this again, this sense of being in this vulnerable center, right? It makes life this kind of long emergency that can be pacified by, increasingly strenuous efforts to control experience, right? We have to control this thing because at any moment, we're constantly. But if you just look
at any moment, we might die.
Yeah, we're avoiding death. But even if for those of us who don't think about death very often, I mean, and there are those people, we're constantly modifying our experience so as to avoid discomfort, whether it's social discomfort or physical discomfort, or just every correction in our bodies. I mean, if you just try to sit still for an hour, you'll notice that all of the micro adjustments in posture that you're now no longer making are made because you really don't have to wait long before you feel miserable. I mean, your body, the amount of pain you can get just sitting in the most comfortable chair you can find in your home and just resolving not to move is quite extraordinary. It's just, it's just, there's no position that's comfortable enough that it will be comfortable an hour from now.